Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters for the European region. We are heading into our fourth match of the day. We just saw Tice in a dominant performance, 2-0 game score over Bunny Hopper. But now we're coming into Seiko versus Pavel. And this match includes our feature deck of the day, with Pavel piloting the Chef Nomi Priest.
He does indeed. This was a very, very bold prediction, or bold bring from our previous world champion here at the Grand Masters. We don't feel personally that it has worked out particularly well for him. We think he was anticipating a meta with more rogues, which is why he went for this Nomi Priest. But as you can see, this deck is built entirely around drawing all the cards in your deck, with Northside Cleric, Acolyte of Pain, and Gadgetzan Auctioneer. Then you hit the board with Chef Nomi and Seance to play multiple times that Chef Nomi. The problem is, up against Bomb Warrior, when they shuffle in 4, 5, 6 bombs into your deck and you're drawing through your whole deck as quick as you humanly can, you will die, pretty much.
It definitely can happen. I mean, you can fail to have the bomb cards as Bomb Warrior. You can fail to have Brawl at the end of the game if they get to that Chef Nomi spot. But, you know, the whole point of that Chef Priest deck is combo through and through. And what Pavel was trying to take advantage of was other players piloting Rogue. Yep. It's one of the strongest decks right now. It is arguably the strongest deck right now, and a lot of players anticipated it. It's the reason you saw so many people bring Warrior to the table. It was to try and have an edge versus that deck, while also having game against other things. Pavel went a bit more all-in, which is a style of his that I've discussed with him. I'm very familiar with. He will try to take advantage of the fact that players can make mistakes in deck choices. That's something that he's told me he actively seeks from time to time.
And while I am a fan from a spectator standpoint of going with strategies like that, where you bring very off-the-wall, bold predictions to these tournaments, I think generally, in my experience, especially casting the tour stops last year, players who bring the lineups of just covering all their bases, one of the best classes at the moment, and making sure that you just bring the statistically best options, generally I think will fare better.
My caveat to that is that I think that the stronger your opponents are, the more willing you should be to take risks.
That is
you should take them, but more willing to. And I think
Excellent.
Pavel's definitely willing to take them. And take a look at Seiko's Bomb Warrior deck. Pretty straightforward in terms of the matchup here, but something to really note is that there is only one copy of Brawl. So without bomb pressure, it does provide an opening for Pavel to get something done.
Yeah, exactly. This is sort of the worst of both worlds here for Seiko in his primary deck, where he doesn't have the augmented Elex in his primary deck, but he also doesn't have the double Brawl or the super colliders in his primary deck, as we've been seeing from some players. So the early game pressure route is more difficult, again, because he's missing the Elex to get those bomb shuffles and just have a 3-4 body in play. But also later on in the game, when the Chef Nomis start hitting the board, only one Brawl might make it difficult. I would still, however, call him the favorite.
Yeah, taking a look at his secondary and tertiary decks as well for Seiko, he only has one augmented Elic in his tertiary deck. So the maximum access he has to that is the one. But you take a look at his secondary deck, where he has the second copy of Brawl and 2 copies of Super Collider. You know, there are times at the end of the game where Warrior can use Super Collider with a couple of shield slams.
Absolutely.
And take out the front half of a Nomi, force your opponent to have to load up more, and then be able to wipe it out afterwards. So I'll be curious to see which one he actually goes for when we move into games number 2 and possibly 3. Just very curious thing as we lead off here with a turn 1 Omega Assembly. And typically you do that against aggro decks when you know you're going to be under pressure.
Right, when you need to have minions that you can put in play to fight back. What you would also do it against is if you need to be the aggro deck and just hit your opponent as hard as you can. For example, just curve out 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, Brawl isn't really a 5-drop curve card, but you can coin Dr. Boom after that.
No, it's when your opponent kills everything and has the final minion in play, you then Brawl with the Brawl and keep pressuring. And you don't attack first because you need to win that Brawl anyway. You stare them straight in the face, you Brawl, and then you attack afterwards.
You see, the thing is, that is exactly what Pavel would do. It's a shame it's not the other way around, because he would just look you dead in the eye, and you'd probably just concede right there because he's so scary.
Chip it away early on to Seiko. And this, admittedly, is a wonderful curve for him. However, Pavel does have, I'd say, the most key opening card with Gadgetzan Auctioneer.
Undeniably.
His found Northshire Cleric with Circle of Healing in hand, has a wealth of 0-cost spells, some extra healing. I mean, this is the makings of a hand that can win the game.
It really is. This is not like the absolute dream, because having a Wild Pyromancer in combination with the Northshire Cleric and the Circle of Healings, that is the dream. That draws you an absolutely absurd amount of cards right at the start. But as you said, with how many 0-cost cards in this, 5 0-cost cards in hand, turn 6 you can just slam that Auctioneer and start popping.
Yeah, I'm curious about the Divine Hymn on this turn. I actually think I would have liked to see it from Pavel. It's the maximum health restoration. You know you're going to take damage. I would have liked to see it used right away and then just hope to bridge with the Gadgetzan Auctioneer next turn.
Okay.
The reason he's saving it, I think, is for Wild Pyromancer turns down the road.
Yeah, it's possible. I think it's very likely that he will end up just using it mainly for the health at some point. But even then, I don't like saving it for the possibility of a higher upside with the Wild Pyro. And while I was saying Brawl is not a 5-drop, when you got all mechs in play, Dynamatic is a 5-drop. You can play just to curve out, coin Dr. Boom following afterwards. I mean, I guess you don't want to fill up board space to go coin Dr. Boom, but it's more stuff.
You do.
Play. I guess so.
More damage equals more damage,
for Blast
and
Master
more
Boom.
damage typically equals lethal.
So do you think he just plays the Dynamatic?
I definitely would be. Now, there's something to be said, I guess, about the armor break point. If you think about that exactly. And then also just the utility of Dynamatic. It can wipe out a Gadgetzan Auctioneer on the following turn.
Good point.
So I think the Eternium Rover plus the Hero Power is pretty close to the same thing. You're taking up the spot of a Boombot here, but I don't think that you're always coining Blastmaster Boom on this turn. The next turn, that is.
Yes, I agree. You want to leave your options open.
For Pavel, you are always playing Gadgetzan Auctioneer here,
Yep.
and the reason he wouldn't have used Divine Hymn was specifically for regenerates.
There's one bomb. That's not good for Seiko. He wanted to get those in the deck in order to activate his Blast Master Boom. But at the same time, Pavel is going to start taking damage.
Nice little combo there.
Yeah, lovely.
Another regenerate. Another bomb drawn.
That's both the bombs now out of the deck. But at the same time, he's taking a good amount of damage while he's doing this.
Another topsy-turvy. Well, some things are happening.
Look at this! This is absolutely absurd.
So the thing to note now is that Pavel will have a hard time just simply clearing a Blastmaster Boom by itself.
Okay, yeah, good point.
There's no Shadow Word Deaths in the deck. There's no longer any topsy-turvies with Lazul schemes. Forbidden Words is the last direct answer
And
to that, or getting Grave Horrors in the way.
Right. So then on this turn, in order to do that before the Grave Horrors can start to come down, we could see push everything face, shield slam, coin Doctor. Oh no, sorry, 6-man, he wouldn't have, so he has to just do it this way, then coin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this.
Yeah, because the Auctioneer has to die.
Yes, yeah, sorry, I was thinking it was a 7-man, for whatever idiotic reason.
So Pavel,
you've got to play this turn.
Running into 2 bombs was a big payoff for him here, because
huge.
It's so much less damage he's going to suffer as a result of that. Now, the other answer to Blastmaster Boom is just to pop off with a Wild Pyromancer. This is possible.
How do you sequence this, though? What do you want to draw with? What's the most important card to play here? Cleric draws you more cards. Oh, does it draw you more cards than Acolyte, though?
Not always because of the Boom bots, but I think it often does.
Yeah.
So I would tend to, I think, go with the Northshire Cleric because the Acolyte of Pain is just too expensive. Like, you're going to want to spend your mana this turn.
Yeah. Ooh. Perfectly reasonable there for Seiko.
Yeah, that is difficult for Pavel at this point, which at this point you might be reserved to just taking it slower or just jamming an Acolyte of Pain and threatening a setup on the following turn.
So the 7 does get to connect to face, but if Pavel can stabilize this board, he could absolutely turn the corner here. There's really not that much more bomb shuffle available for Seiko, and he has no card draw in his hand to be able to get to those bomb effects, whereas Pavel, on the other hand, will be turboing through his deck from this point in. And he has the heal as well. 12 health with 2 Divine Hymns.
This is the spot where I'm in as the warrior where I felt good, and now I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit worried now. Like,
yeah. He's still got 1 bomb in his deck, however, though, that was shuffled on that turn, right?
So he would try to force the draw with Warpath in order to get Pavel to the bomb?
There's 1 bomb left. He threatens lethal on this turn.
And if you let Pavel get to his next turn, he'll have full mana to heal up and then try to draw that bomb. Oh, this is interesting.
And he does not know if it's the way to go. This is a gamble. He wants that lethal
Seiko
right now.
And he gets it! Seiko takes advantage of the fact that Pavel has got an Acolyte of Pain in play and pushes the damage.
What a play. I mean, that was
Heck
bold.
yeah!
That was very, very bold to be going for that Dynamatic there.
Now that right there is Dr. Boom's scheme. Force your opponent to draw cards, but that would have been a broken card. But that play right there, it demonstrates, I think, the desperate situations you can get in when you're facing combo decks like Nomi Priest. You have to do wild and crazy things like that sometimes in order to secure that edge. And that's exactly what Seiko recognized in the first opportunity he had available to him.
And that was just perfect capitalization on the knowledge that he had gleaned from that situation, because we both realized things were starting to slip out of his control. He had to do something spectacular right then. And so he did. He just decided to win the game on the spot, blow everything up in true Dr. Boom fashion, and then get that spectacular bomb lethal.
Unbelievable. Nails it right off the bat, too. Pavel didn't even get the extra turn. So that's game 1 in the book. So we're going to be going to game 2, but we have to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to find out if Pavel can make a comeback in this.
Welcome to Hearthstone Masters. Today, we're going to share one of the biggest changes coming to Hearthstone in 2019, an entirely new competitive format called Specialist. Specialist will be the default competitive format for Hearthstone Masters. From online Masters qualifiers to live Masters Tour events to the pinnacle of competition, Hearthstone Grandmasters. Ready to learn how the new Specialist format works? Let's dive right in. In this new competitive format, players select 3 30-card decks to bring to a Specialist tournament. The catch? All decks must be from the same class. In this regard, Specialist is a major departure from most other competitive formats. Amongst every player's 3 Specialist decks, one is designated as the primary deck. The player's other 2 decks are designated as secondary and tertiary decks. There are no special limitations placed on a player's primary deck aside from regular Hearthstone deck construction rules. However, a player's secondary and tertiary decks must share at least 25 cards in common with their primary deck. In other words, secondary and tertiary decks must mirror the primary deck with up to 5 cards swapped out. It is important to point out that duplicate cards count when comparing to a primary deck. For example, if you want to include 2 copies of Twilight Drake in your secondary deck, and there are no copies of Twilight Drake in your primary deck, then you must spend 2 swaps to include both cards. Unique or not, if a card isn't in your primary deck, it counts towards the 5-card difference limit. A player's primary deck is important for another reason. Whenever a new match starts, both its players must begin by piloting their primary deck. Only after the first game concludes can you choose to swap into your secondary or tertiary deck. You do not announce which of your decks you will be using in the next game, and you do not have to swap. After every game, this process repeats, allowing players to swap or stay until the match concludes. Importantly, you can swap to any of your decks between games, primary, secondary, or tertiary, including returning to your primary deck if you have previously swapped out of it. And those are all the rules for Specialist, Hearthstone's new official competitive format. So what are you waiting for? Get out there and start brewing your own primary, secondary, and tertiary decks to get a jump start on the new format and innovate like the pros.
Let the battle begin!
It's Hearthstone Grandmasters of the European region. We are amongst our 4th series of the day. It's Seiko versus Pavel, and Seiko's out to a 1-0 lead. Not unexpectedly so, but perhaps took game number 1 in unexpected fashion.
Yes, definitely happened surprisingly, to say the least, because Pavel really looked like he might be just about to turn the corner there at the end of that game. But Seiko with a very risky line of play that worked out beautifully for him. A calculated risk, it's worth saying. He wasn't just throwing out his cards. He knew exactly what he was doing, but it could have gone very wrong for him.
When you force your opponent to draw cards, it's either very right or very wrong in most situations. I think back to Orange versus Surrender at the Summer Championship, where Orange decided to move in and force Surrender to draw some extra cards.
Yeah.
And then with the last little bit of gusto he had mustered, he went, well, I've come this far, let's make him draw some more, and burned the rest of his resources to try and force a key overdraw to burn that card away. Ended up failing, but is still to this day one of the most memorable plays that I've ever seen. Due to the stakes, largely. Here in week number 1, it's just showing off. But, you know, if that was like do or die for the playoffs at that point,
yeah,
that's awesome.
It all matters. It all matters. They're only playing 14 games in season 1 of the Grandmasters.
14 matches.
14 matches, sorry.
That is.
Yes.
If you manage to only play 28 games in 14 matches, it's either very good or very bad, akin to forcing your opponent to draw extra cards.
You're a man of absolutes, aren't you?
Yes. I think only in greens and reds.
That also makes you a Sith Lord.
Does it?
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Oh, I thought you meant greens and reds. I was like,
oh no, well, the red part would.
Merry Christmas! The Emperor's here! Well, Pavel went for his secondary deck in this one.
Right.
Which includes 2 copies of Mountain Giant. Those are the only additions.
I think he's not only is he the only player to bring Priest to Grandmasters, he's the only player to only swap out 2 cards in one of his secondary or tertiary decks.
He has 2 cards in his secondary deck and 3 cards in his tertiary deck. It gives you an idea of how core the Chef Priest deck has become in that regard, where it's very refined and that's it. It's a combo deck through and through.
Either that, or it gives you an insight into Pavel's mind, where he's saying, you know what? Why improve upon perfection? I built the ultimate deck list. Let's just leave it there.
Unlucky to lose game number 1.
What a fluke.
Looking over at Seiko's secondary deck, which is what he's gone for, it includes 2 more copies of Big Game Hunter, 2 copies of Super Collider, and the Brawl. So there is some risk here for Pavel of just jamming down a Mountain Giant. If it gets Big Game Huntered, you're in trouble. But if it doesn't get Big Game Huntered, you're not in trouble.
And that is why I believe Pavel, who tends to be one of the quicker players, did rope this whole turn, because he's thinking, can I do anything different? Do I have to throw down this Giant, which could so easily be hit with one of those 2 Big Game Hunters?
And the answer is yeah. The rest of your hand doesn't do anything.
It does nothing, yeah. Until you get to turn 6, or turn 5, actually. I suppose you could coin out the Auctioneer, which you may have to do due to the pressure. You're probably just looking much more likely to try and throw out the Giant and trade with the board.
I am quite curious about his next turn, because with 5 0-cost cards in hand, including the coin, what that means is he has opportunities to utilize Circle of Healing with a trade.
Yep.
The Auctioneer will be in play and threatening a 2-pronged attack. Where, you know, Seiko's going to be worried about the Mountain Giant, but he's also, you know, primarily worried about the Gadsden Auctioneer. There's a lot of different ways for this to build up.
There really are, and I was thinking what it probably would come down to was if his opponent, if Seiko plays the BGH, he will coin the Auctioneer because he's under too much pressure. If he doesn't, he would wait a turn because he can just trade with the board. However, Seiko is not clearing the Giant. He's instead launching everything to the face.
Yeah, this is the alternative to the Giant as well. And when you don't have a check to a Mountain Giant, this is usually a good course of action against a deck that features fairly few counterplay options.
Yeah.
So now my question is, what kind of nonsense can Pavel cook up with the hand he's got? You know, like, I even look at Wild Pyromancer, Seance, Topsy-Turvy. Like, what kind of weird stuff can you do? I am not an expert with Chef Priest, and frankly, few people are. It's typically limited to players who just really love combo and almost exclusively play it.
I agree. And one of the most interesting things I think about specifically this matchup is that when Deaddraw, a UK player who's been playing a tremendous amount of Chef Nomi Priest, I believe he has already qualified through to Seoul using this deck in one of the qualifiers, although I would have to check that. I think he has. One of the big things he was really trying to optimize with this deck was figuring out, how do I beat Bomb Warrior? How can I tech this matchup in my secondary or tertiary in order to win this matchup? And so far as I can tell, he's struggled with that greatly. It's difficult to do. The deck inherently sucks in this matchup.
Kill stuff, have a Giant.
This is kind of a greedy play, but at the same time, it does everything he wanted to do on this turn. It just doesn't develop the Auctioneer, which is good to have in play. It forces your opponent to spend the mana to kill it, but you can still do that next turn.
I feel like that Pavel needed to check the pressure there.
Yes.
Like, I don't think you can afford to take 3 more damage. I really don't. And so from here, I think it boils down to if Pavel can effectively launch an assault without having to go through the entire deck. If he has to go through the entire deck, there's way too many bombs in there right now. It will take a long time for that to happen, and Seiko's not going to give him that. He has Dr. Boom in hand and will be able to keep the pressure going.
cards. Only going to help the situation for Seiko. It could very well end up finishing in a similar situation to last time, with all these bombs being shuffled in. If Pavel keeps drawing, he's just going to die.
Got to get the extra health first. So, you know, to that same regard, how many cards can you draw with Auctioneer? I think you can still draw a number of them because you need to find Divine Favors first anyway. And so here we go.
Pavel realizes even if he is very likely to draw the bombs, he needs to go off with the Auctioneer here and regenerate, as you just exclaimed. It's a fantastic way to start.
Exclamated.
Exclamated, yeah.
No, that's not the right word. It's just that's what it sounded like you were going to say.
Yeah. It sounds like a word, if you don't think about it.
Most things make more sense if you don't think about them. Ooh, that's also the benefit there.
Okay, we're getting somewhere here.
Yeah, he's putting together some stuff here, and honestly, he might have enough to make a push.
So there are still 4 bombs in the deck now, right? With the 2 goblins and both swings of the Wrench Caliber.
There's 18 cards left in the deck, though.
Yes.
So Pavel's got to think about where that lines up.
So even if he draws as many cards as he possibly can on this turn, he's unlikely to die. But even then, he's got the second Gadget Sand. He's allowed to save this, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about, was the lack of Circle of Healing here. That could be perhaps to an advantage to Pavel, though. He gets to crack through for some damage here. His Auctioneer's gone, which I actually think is what he wants to happen right now. Because now he takes his time. He plays a single card, which is the Grave Harbor. He gets to seance it back to hand and perhaps keep going. But if that wasn't the case, I'd be curious where he has to go after this, because Wild Pyromancer Acolyte to keep filtering, or Wild Pyromancer Northshire Cleric to keep filtering.
Yeah.
I think this is totally fine. I think that Pavel definitely needed to figure out how to slow down that turn.
I'm not convinced, personally. I think keeping the tempo of the Giant on board was really important to trade into what your opponent is doing, so that you can then spend your later mana just on drawing.
Well, he's gone full Northshire.
He is absolutely popping off here.
He cannot use Divine Him. Oh, he can overdraw the bombs!
He's going to overdraw the bomb.
Oh, I forgot about this! Uh-oh.
That's one.
There's only 4 in the deck.
It's 3 more.
And he's found Chef Nomi, and he has... Oh! He burns a bomb, and he has both seances! He can just go in!
He can just go again. Just play another Divine Hymn, a Circle of Healing, whatever. Just do it!
Do it! You won't! I am actually really surprised he didn't Divine Him in this spot.
So he's still at 10 cards, so he still overdraws a card, which is, at this point, a 50% chance to be a bomb.
He realizes it's a mistake here, too.
Well, he should have healed one of his minions, right, instead. Like, he
should
just wants to overdraw as much.
He should Divine Him here. Divine
agree.
Him will take him to 9 cards. He'll draw 6 cards. That burns the rest of his deck. He goes directly into Chef Nomi.
He can't seance it on the following turn, so maybe he wouldn't play it next turn anyway, because he wants to save
That's
till
the
turn
reason
9.
he would not. Correct. That's what I missed. So he should not have played it.
But the thing is, it's not like you have the ability to draw 6 cards next turn. These minions aren't surviving until the following turn.
But you have another Acolyte Mom Pyromancer.
Yeah.
The problem is that burns through your hand at that point. You have to keep your hand size high to get through.
Well, he should definitely have healed his minion there instead of... Oh, maybe he shouldn't. Maybe the health total is more important. Very complicated turn there, and I think we can agree that he should have just drawn more cards in some capacity.
I just don't know how. Because you need the extra health on yourself, but you need to draw the cards as well. And so he's trying to specifically overdraw bombs in this scenario.
Yeah.
I just don't know what the best way to do that is. Bomb overdrawn. 2 left.
So even if he draws both of them, he's not dead. However, when it gets to the point that you are fatigued, your opponent can play Clockwork Goblin pretty much just to deal 5 damage to you.
What is a loon's will?
How do you risk this properly?
Well, now, like to reset up the board position where you can draw the cards, you have to put cards out of your hand to play the Acolyte of Pain and the Wild Pyromancer, which means you draw the cards rather than overdrawing them, which is what you do not want to happen. But if he doesn't develop anything here, Seiko just goes onto the board and he just dies.
So then play as much stuff as you can. The problem is he's staring at Discover a Mech. Oh, but Seiko's on 9 mana. That's actually really important that he's on 9 mana.
Because he can't Omega Devastator yet.
Correct. So if you get past this one turn safely, that may be enough to push you over the edge.
Very possible. Second Wrench Caliber being found as well, though, for Seiko.
Yes.
This is 3 more bombs that he can shuffle into the deck. So important.
Triple Warpath with the double Acolyte digs Seiko deeper into the deck and then uses Super Collider to wipe out the minions.
Perfectly sequenced.
That is very nice for Seiko. Because he cannot let this pressure mount.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how this one slips away. 2 out of 3 cards we believe in Pavel's deck are now simply bombs.
Yeah, and I think that Pavel, he just has to go for it here and set up. So he has the Grave Horror to be the precursor to this, but I think he's just dead.
So next turn, Clockwork Goblin, Wrench Caliber, the bomb explodes, the 1 from Fatigue. That's 16.
And he has Divine Him, and he has Hero Power, so he delays the Nomi for a turn. Wow, this is complicated.
Very much so. Assuming that is the bomb in his deck, which I'm pretty sure it is 1 bomb left.
And for Seiko, you don't want to show that immediately. You want to have the right moment for it. Because anytime that you don't die for a turn, it makes Pavel take the risk of not healing so that he can play Nomi and use the Seance to back himself up to a brawl.
But this is where the deck, one of the big weaknesses of the deck from Chef Nomi is if your opponent develops into your Nomi turn, you cannot afford to clear it. You have to play Nomi and Seance, 9 mana is taken, you just have to tank the damage. Which Pavel, I don't think can afford to do, straight up.
So this is a nice mix of in between of the two, where you leave the Gadsden Auctioneer alive and make it to where Pavel plays a Seance. What that means is he's fatiguing that extra damage.
Yep.
This is beautiful from Seiko. This was the perfect middle ground.
We're almost out of cards.
Oh, it was a regenerate.
Oh, excuse us.
Okay.
Oh, so that's a big deal. But there's no way for Pavel to clear off his own Auctioneer here. If he uses Regenerate, he goes to 19, he falls to 14, then he goes to 13 from Fatigue. Seiko has 4 damage lined up immediately, which would drop him to 10. The bomb drops him to 5. The Fatigue drops him to 3. So with Seiko's hand, the Clockwork Goblin results in lethal in that situation.
Yeah.
Pavel's going to find the way to play around specifically just the 1 bomb and try to have lethal in the following turn.
He can't.
I'm curious if that means for Pavel, you play Regenerate and you play Chef Nomi.
Is there ever consideration to just playing Nomi and saying both rules have to be at the bottom of the deck?
That's exactly where I'm headed with that. You don't end up seancing it, you just play the Nomi and hope that that's good enough. I think that's the line Pavel's on.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's unlikely to work out, obviously, as we can see, but
with this play,
you've got to do something.
He gets to heal up, go to 18. So his plan now is to try to chip away and have the brawl damage be impactful enough.
He knows there's a bomb left in the deck. He knows another one comes this turn.
Oh, that's lethal.
That is lethal.
It is finished.
And Pavel ending predictably, but still somewhat miserably for him, with his Chef Nomi Priest finding bad matchup after bad matchup here in the first week of Grandmasters. Seiko taking him down very handily indeed.
Yeah, the big risk from Pavel not paying off in this one. His deck is pretty much targeted at defeating rogue strategies and having game against mage strategies in this one. It pretty much ignores warrior as a matchup is what it feels like. And Given his opponents this week, it's just not going to pan out for him, I don't think. This is a risky call, and that's how risks work sometimes. You either look like a genius or you left wondering what happened.
And I think he made a lot of the same calls that other players made, but he just went to an extreme with it, to a higher degree than a lot of other players. If you look at most players' primary deck lists, that usually tends to be the anti-rogue list in players' lineup, with the oozes thrown in there, a little bit more healing thrown in there as well. But for Pavel, going all in on the Chef Nomi was just a step too far, predicting, as you said, rogues and probably also control warriors over bomb warriors.
Indeed. And it sounds like we have Seiko ready for an interview. Seiko, can you hear us?
Yes.
Congratulations on your win today. Pretty good matchup for you, I'd say, here in your first match in Grandmasters. Talk me through your strategy preparing for this event and some of your tech choices in the sideboard. How did you land on these decks?
I was actually quite worried against Pavel because I only expected Rogue, Warrior, and Mage. So my first deck was against Rogue, the second one against Mage, and the last one for the Mirror. So it wasn't. It was still hard against Pavel, I feel, because I cutted some bombs and the Alex. So I don't have that many bombs.
So without the bombs, is this a matchup that you went back and practiced quite a bit? Or is this something that you kind of knew going into it that you had made that sacrifice and just hope to get the right cards?
Yeah, I was pretty sure that no one will bring Nomi Priest because I tested it myself. So I just teched for the other matchups and didn't expect to face this matchup actually.
Well, I was actually wondering a little bit more outside of game about your practice partners, because I know that you are both obviously in Team Genji, as we can see from your sweater, but also a key part of a lot of the German practice groups. Who were the main people you were practicing for? Was it mainly your teammates or your countrymen that you were working with here?
I actually started playing this month 2 days before submission, so I didn't prep too much. But I had Kaka and Swills helping me with the lineup, so it was quite fast.
It's a good practice partners to have, indeed. Congratulations on your first win here in Grandmaster, Seiko, and look forward to seeing you play tomorrow.
Yeah. See you.
Swids is a good practice partner to have.
It's a fantastic partner to have. So is Ostkaka, I would say.
Team Genji just looks good.
They are looking fantastic. I mean, it was only the team kill yesterday from their 2 pickups in Race and Now Go Down yesterday that stopped them from having a very good score so far.
Yep, and also, I really like the call that he had made where he even mentioned that he had practiced Nomi Priest specifically, didn't expect it to show up, and so trimmed out part of that bomb package is in there. You don't necessarily need a ton of bombs to get the job done. I think that going all in on them is also akin to like the Nomi Priest call, where you're expecting a very specific style of metagame. It can pay off or it can fail spectacularly. And in this one, it's enough to get the job done. If you still draw the bomb cards, they're still very good.
Yeah, and we're talking about decks that can work well or fail spectacular. I feel like the other end of the spectrum here for a lot of players is Mage. I think that was a pretty big gamble. It's still a relatively new deck. While people have been having success with it on ladder, it's far from the overlords that are Rogue and Warrior at the moment. So bringing that has clearly worked out fantastically with Mage, I believe, still being undefeated in Grandmasters.
Indeed it is, and Seiko undefeated in Grandmasters as well. He wins over Pavel by a score of 2-0, which means that we have 1 match left here for the Grandmasters in the European region. So don't go anywhere. That 5th and final match is coming up right after this.